Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about how Jeep is not selling as a brand. This isn't an isolated issue where one dealership is struggling to sell the Jeep brand. Every single Jeep dealer is struggling to sell cars right now, and so we're going to get down to the bottom of this. Before we get in this video though, as always, a huge shout out and thank you to the Larry Miller Dodge Ram Jeep Chrysler here in Sandy. The reason I'm giving them a shout out is because I happen to be on their lot right now to film this video, so I got to give them a shout out. If you're looking for a great deal on a Dodge Ram Jeep or Chrysler, link to their inventory in the description down below. And then as always, if you want to save time and money the next time you purchase a car, link to my car buying guide in the description down below. Let's get into the video. Let's start things off by going over the facts and figures. The first fact is that Jeep currently has the second largest day supply of car inventory in the United States. If you're wondering, number one is Buick. And if you guys want me to make a video talking about why Buicks aren't selling, I can make a video about it. But regardless, this means that Jeep has more inventory than pretty much everyone else. If you're wondering what day supply actually means, this is the number of days that it would take Jeep dealers to sell out of all of their inventory at the current sales rate. And if you're wondering what the number is, it's almost 120 days. The national average is currently less than 60, and so Jeep literally has 2 times the national average in terms of inventory with their day supply, which means that Jeeps aren't selling all that well. And to support the fact that Jeep is struggling to sell vehicles, Q4 of 2022 saw a sales decline of 18%. Jeep sold about 143,000 units nationally, and that is down by a significant amount compared to what they normally do in Q4 of a given year. They normally sell closer to 200,000 vehicles, and so they are not only in a situation where they have more inventory than pretty much everyone else, but they're also declining in overall sales volume. And so I think a great way to try to figure out why this is happening is by, well, coming to the Dodge Ram Jeep Chrysler here in Sandy and looking at the different models that Jeep offers to try to figure out if there's, I don't know, something wrong with the product that Jeep's selling. Are people not buying Jeeps because of what Jeep is offering? And so let's look at the different models. So I guess we'll start things off with one of the biggest names in Jeep's lineup, and that is the Cherokee. Now this particular one is a Luxe package, which is really nice. Now obviously I don't have the keys to this car, but you guys can see inside we've got a pretty nice leather interior. It's got stuff like heated seats, and it actually gets pretty good fuel economy because this has a turbocharged 2-liter engine, 21 around town, 29 on the highway, and this costs less than $40,000 brand new, and that's obviously before any sort of discounts or incentives, and we'll talk about those a little bit later in the video. But the average brand new car in today's market costs closer to $50,000, so this is less expensive than the average brand new car. 4x4 SUV, nice interior, nice features, so it looks like a solid product to me. And the thing about Jeep is, since they're an off-road brand, they have cool off-road versions of their cars. Like this is the Cherokee Trailhawk, which is, well, the off-road version of the Cherokee. Now the next vehicle is the Compass. Jeep actually just redid the Compass for the 2023 model year, and so they did add some updates. I actually reviewed one, and that one was actually pretty much identical in price to the Cherokee, which is crazy. But again, in terms of how it stacks up against the competition, it had 4-wheel drive, it had a really nice interior, lots of nice creature comforts, and again, it was less than $40,000, so technically affordable in today's market. Now another vehicle that Jeep sells is the Renegade, and you can get the Renegade in some pretty cool colors. Now again, 4x4, well, you can get this with 4x4 like the other Jeeps. You can get this for under $30,000 all day, and again, this is before discounts. I'm just talking about MSRP prices, and so, you know, it's a good little crossover 4-wheel drive, and again, it's affordable. Now the next vehicle is the Gladiator, and I'm going to make a dedicated video to the Gladiator because, well, it kind of has its own market trend that's outside of the Jeep brand, but this is basically a convertible off-road truck that Jeep sells. It's essentially a Wrangler with a truck bed. And well, speaking of Wrangler, this is another vehicle that Jeep sells. It's probably their most iconic vehicle. Now the thing that's interesting about the Wrangler is this is the one that I would say is the least affordable out of the bunch because it's seen the biggest price increases, but that's because, well, it seems like Wrangler people are willing to pay them. And then, of course, we got the new kids on the block. We got the Wagoneer and Grand Wagoneer. Those are actually both Grand Wagoneers, but just pretend like one of them's a Wagoneer. It's Jeep's big, full-size SUV. The Grand Wagoneer is a full-on luxury car, over $100,000. The Wagoneer is still a luxury car, but it's more affordable. It's in like the $60,000, $70,000 range, depending on how you spec it out. And then finally, we have the Grand Cherokees and the Grand Cherokee L's. This vehicle has a huge range from, you know, being a fully loaded luxury car, which can cost as much as over $80,000, or you can get more of like a quote-unquote baseline version that's a lot more affordable in like the $40,000 price range, which again is less expensive than the average brand new car. Well, I think I just got my steps in for the next century. That was a lot of walking, but this is a huge lot. They have so many cars here. But there's a trend that you guys probably noticed. A lot of the affordable Jeeps, right? there's like tons of them. And then the middle of the line Jeeps like the Grand Cherokee, for example, there's also a ton of them. But then the super highline packages like the Grand Wagoneer, well, wasn't that many of them. And a Jeep that you guys didn't see at all is the Jeep Wrangler Rubicon 392. There's not a single one for sale because, well, it's actually completely sold out. And so it actually shows a pretty interesting trend that I want to talk about. But before I dive into that interesting trend, I want to talk about something else that I haven't mentioned in this video yet. And that something else happens to be Jeep's reliability rating. There have been a lot of reports released recently that have been painting Jeep as a very, let's just say, not so reliable brand. For example, I can't remember which report it was. Comment down below if you remember which one it was. But the report basically stated that Jeep is now less reliable than Land Rover. Like, this is what a lot of these reports are now saying. And so it's obviously painting a picture of Jeep as a brand that is not going to last over the long term, which I think is very impactful in terms of the image of Jeep, because like you look at the Wrangler and people buy Wranglers because it's a vehicle that can go anywhere and it's a vehicle that can hopefully go anywhere reliably. And so if people are concerned about the reliability of Jeep, given what the brand is all about, off-roading and all that kind of stuff, then, you know, it's obviously going to push them away. And well, this leads me back into talking about why a bunch of Jeep's affordable models are available for sale, middle of the line models are available for sale, and why the high line packages are pretty much sold out. Like, they are selling like hotcakes, and it's just a sign of what's happening within our economy right now. So if you haven't been living under a rock, then you know that interest rates are a lot higher today than they have been over the last like decade. I mean, an interest rate on a brand new car is getting to the point where it's averaging around like almost 10%, which is really high, which absolutely crushes the affordability of anyone that's going to be financing a car. And if you look at the demographics that purchase from Jeep, they're going to be the ones that are going to be impacted pretty much the hardest, because the average person that purchases a Jeep is like the average person here in the US, and the average person here in the US is, well, getting crushed not only by these high interest rates, but also by inflation as well. And so it makes sense as to why a brand that builds models that are supposed to appeal to the average person is struggling to sell those models when we are currently in an economy that is, well, not favoring that particular demographic of people. And so then you might ask, well, then if the regular Jeeps aren't selling, why are the Highline Jeeps selling? Why are the Rubicon 392s and the Grand Wagoneers selling so well when, you know, I don't know, something that's more affordable like a Jeep Cherokee isn't selling if the economy is in a state where things are not the greatest? And the answer is, the people that are attracted to purchasing those Highlines aren't struggling right now. People that had money prior to this whole interest rate and inflation situation, they still have money. And frankly, a lot of them have even more money today than what they had prior to this whole situation. And this isn't just like a Jeep thing. If you look at Ford with their Highline product, you know, the GT500s, the Raptors, the super loaded up Super Duties that are over $100,000, those are selling amazingly well. If you look at luxury brands, Mercedes, BMW, Audi, all of their expensive vehicles, they're all sold out. And it's because, again, the people that purchase those products, they're not struggling in this economic situation. Again, it's the average Joe that's struggling. And so if you are a manufacturer that builds cars that appeal to the average Joe, then you're gonna struggle to sell them. So pulling everything together, Jeep currently has way more inventory than everyone else from a day supply standpoint, but just from an inventory standpoint in general. This is something that I didn't mention earlier in the video that I probably should have, I guess, if I was a better news reporter, whatever you want to call me for today's video. But seriously, I review cars for a living, and so I see a bunch of different dealerships that represent a bunch of different brands. And I can tell you, the inventory levels that Jeep has are just absolutely massive compared to everyone else. Like, I will say, I want to give a high five and a pat on the back to Stellantis for being able to like somehow produce a massive amount of cars when everyone else is claiming that they're like still struggling. It's like Stellantis has it figured out. So like Ford and Honda and Toyota, they need to go and meet with Stellantis and, you know, get everything figured out so that they can also build a lot of cars like what Stellantis is doing. And so anyways, the reason as to why Jeep is not selling as many vehicles anymore is happening for, well, a number of different reasons. First off, perceived reliability is not all that strong right now, and I think this is something that is extremely important for Jeep as a brand, because again, they are an off-road adventure brand, and so reliability is going to be extremely important. And I'm saying this as someone who currently owns a Jeep. I have a Jeep Wrangler, and well, I haven't had any issues with the Wrangler that have left me stranded. I have had some issues with the steering, which was pretty interesting. But I do think that this is super important. So I think that Jeep needs to go back to the drawing board, and they need to revise some things with their vehicles to make it so that they are more reliable, to gain back the trust of buyers. Again, it's super important for their brand image, and they just need to bump up those Consumer Reports and JD Power ratings. Like, that's super important. But a brand being perceived as having poor reliability is not a death blow in my personal opinion, because, well, again, look at Jaguar Land Rover. Like, they have had horrible reliability for like decades at this point, and, well, people still buy from the brands. And so it's not just that, it's a combination of that plus the current economic state that we're in, paired with the vehicles that Jeep builds. Again, if you look at Jeep's lineup, excluding two vehicles, the Grand Wagoneer and the Rubicon 392, and I guess a Jeep Grand Cherokee Summit, all of their vehicles appeal to what I would consider is, again, the average consumer. And, well, the average consumer is getting absolutely destroyed in today's world, in today's market. And so, obviously, they're not going to be able to buy vehicles. And with that being said, at the same time, I think that this also kind of relates back to that reliability issue, because you do have a bunch of people purchasing vehicles in the price ranges that the Cherokee is in and that the Renegade is in. And so why aren't they purchasing those vehicles? Well, the consumers that are purchasing vehicles in that price range are looking for reliability more than anything else. And that's why, you know, Hondas and Toyotas are sold out right now, because those brands, whether or not they are actually reliable with their current product, are perceived as extremely reliable. And so people, if they're purchasing a $20,000 to $30,000 to $40,000 car, they're going to go to Honda and Toyota at this point. Again, with everything that is happening, again, it's all about perception. I think that perception is key to this particular situation. However, with all of that being said, I do see a big, bright, shining light at the end of the tunnel. And the first part of the light is the fact that, well, there are discounts on Jeeps that are pretty substantial. Jeep has released a ton of incentives on their product, and it makes sense. They have a lot of inventory, so they got to incentivize the inventory to move it. And on top of that, dealerships are starting to discount the Jeep inventory quite substantially. There are some vehicles that still don't have discounts, but like most Jeep models at this point have some sort of discount from the dealer. Whereas if you go and buy a new Ford or Honda or Toyota or any of the other brands, like, not only do the dealers want MSRP, a lot of dealers want over MSRP on the product. And so I think that with Jeep having these discounts, it's going to help out with the affordability of the brand, which is going to bring more people back into the brand. So I do think that although Jeep is struggling right now, maybe in the next few months, especially if the other manufacturers don't start to have discounts on their product because it's not all that available, you might see more people purchasing Jeeps. And then the other light at the end of the tunnel, or part of the light, whatever you want to call it, is the fact that it looks like Jeep is starting to standardize things a lot more in their vehicles, which I think is going to help out with reliability. I recently reviewed the new Jeep Compass, and it has a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder with an 8-speed automatic transmission. Pretty much the same powertrain that is in the Wrangler. It's the same powertrain that you can get in the Cherokee. Like, it's a powertrain that's in a lot of vehicles. And so I think with Jeep starting to get into standardizing more and more with their vehicles, I think that will, you know, start to help out with that reliability. And so then it'll help out with the perception with the brand as well. Anyways, that's going to sum things up for today's video. Let me know what you think about this Jeep situation. Let me know if you have holdups in terms of purchasing a Jeep, and like why. Like, if you've been thinking about buying a Jeep, what has prevented you from purchasing a Jeep? Is it the price? Is it the features? Like, are the Jeeps lacking features you want? Or is it because you don't think it's going to be a reliable car? I'll see ya.